Hi, I'm Mark Rothermich, product specialist with Genesis Ag. It's early August and I'm here in central Iowa today, and I'm with
Jon Reaman.
John's been working with us for a couple years with the Genesis Ag products and program. We came up today and we're looking at a few different things, and this is one of the tests that John had. John, you want to explain what we've got that we're kind of looking at here?
Sure. So this non-GMO corn that we planted about April 28th, we typically run a 624-6, and then it's got a quarter pound of zinc in it, about 5 to 6 gallons of that in furrow. And so what I did was we added the Carbose and the Vita Intera in with that. So this is a split showing where we added that and where I didn't. So when we filled, we threw it in just to get a check on it.
Right, so we've got the starter, the Vita Intera and Carbose here, and this is, you shut everything off, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So give us a little background, because you had sent me a couple pictures earlier this spring on this treatment. Tell us what you saw there.
Yeah, so when I was side dressing nitrogen, it was around June 3rd, and I got to where this split was, and you could really see the difference in the corn visually, even at that point. And I got out and looked at it, and it was almost a one leaf stage ahead of the other. So it really caught my eye, and I guess that's when I called you and just was surprised to see that big of a difference in that short amount of time. Mm-hmm. So that was right. the first visual, I guess you could actually see it to the row.
Good. So we went out today and we dug a few plants. You guys haven't been like overloaded with rain this summer?
No, not at all. Yeah, about 6.5 inches of rain on this particular field since planting date, and really didn't start with a full profile to begin with either.
What did you notice about the roots, John, when we just dug these? Obviously we didn't wash them off, we just kind of bounced them off, but what have you noticed a difference here?
Yeah, I mean, the visual thing was the more root hairs on this one, and then even as you look down the bottom, or at the bottom of the stalk, I mean, you've got more roots coming out just the bottom versus the other without. So. Right.
Yeah. So what we're seeing here is in the central part of the plant where the initial root system, that's still viable and functioning, where we've got the treatment versus this, where it's starting to hollow out a little bit on this root system. So outside of that, John, I mean, what are your impressions with the corn overall?
No, I think it's good for what limited rain we've had. It sure is taller than I thought it would be, for our rainfall. But I think the corn looks good. I think we got good potential.
Yeah, I agree. Plant health is good. Not showing a lot of stress still, even on the lower parts of the plant. Roots seem viable and active yet. So yeah, I agree. I mean, a little shot of rain would certainly make things better, but I think you're still holding on pretty well. John, you've worked with me in Genesis Ag for 2 years now. Could you give me just your impressions? You were able to attend one of our meetings this winter. We've spent some time in the fields together. What is there about Genesis Ag that appeals to you as a farmer?
I just think, maybe looking at things a different approach than what we've been doing, for decades, really. Looking at the biology side, and not that that's totally new, but I think it's still a pretty new concept to a lot of people. That kind of intrigued me, kind of like we had talked that one time. Why is it when you tear out a pasture and plant beans or corn, that's the best grain that field plants, and it goes downhill from there? Why is that? Is it a biology thing that we're killing off every year by our farming practices? I mean, that's a real possibility. So I guess that's what kind of took me down the road, was just maybe looking at different avenues and different ways of thinking. And
so last year, John, you had success you used our Vita Intera as some foliar, Carbose and Vita Intera foliar. You'd done some work with our Invigorate product and also the biologicals in furrow program. Can you share with us just briefly some of the results you saw from some of that last year?
Yeah, the Invigorate, I believe last year we were probably around maybe 4 bushels, if I remember right, average better. And last year was a real dry year for us, so I was happy just to see that much of a result you could actually measure, in the field. The other thing we talked about was I had the microboom foliar application that I did later in the season, and that was about 7 or 8 bushels when I tested that, so that was really even a better result, I thought, than I would see just with the limited rain. So the potential is definitely there if Mother Nature cooperates.
Right.
So,
yeah. And you shared a unique observation last fall when you were ripping your ends. We're comparing where you'd had the in-furrow biological program.
Oh yes, yeah. When we were just really the only ripping I'll do is where we, compaction zones, grain cart or end rows per se, and I really noticed when we were turning the end rows over that just the amount of root mass and the length of the roots was more in that field, longer and denser in that field than the fields that we didn't put the biological on. So
right.
You wouldn't think you'd notice that in the fall after the fact, but it was pretty apparent to me.
Mm-hmm. But John, that's one of the best things as I work with producers is, you mentioned a different approach to the way you're approaching your farming and some of your practices, but you're really starting to change the way you look at your crops, the things you're trying to notice, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you look at things and get out there and make some observations and see, or is what you're doing working, and that's the biggest thing. And of course it comes down to yield in the end, but I think the things we're doing is getting us in that direction.
John, one of the buzzwords in agriculture recently is sustainability. Everybody probably has a little bit different twist on what sustainability maybe means for them, but can you maybe just briefly tell us what sustainability looks like to you and your dad? You're farming, it's a family operation. What does sustainability mean to you, and how do you see Genesis Ag working into that for your operation?
The biggest thing would be, improving the land beyond what it is today, not just mining the soil or keep adding fertilizer and doing the same thing over and over. Can we get to a point where we can sustain yields or improve yields, use less commercial fertilizer and let that ground work for us, or the biology work for us, the way it was designed. That, to me, that's sustainability. And that's why I guess I chose, to work with you guys and to head down that road. And
so if I asked you, John, to give me a 1-word or 2-word explanation of Genesis to you, how would you respond to that?
Continuing education, I would say, is a big thing for me. Just, you've taught me a lot of things about even corn plants, just looking at different things and how it grows. Continuing ed is what I want to do, and learn more every year, prosper more. So
what are some of the things, expand on that? What things maybe, how have we gone about, what opportunity have you had to learn, and what things do you feel like you're changing with your ability to look at things?
Getting out in the field more, in the spring, early on spring, looking at things, making those early observations where we're doing our checks and seeing if what we're doing is working, and then not just stopping that combine in the fall and making that walk down the row and are all the years uniform or not. I mean, everybody's in a big rush in the fall, but we got to make some observations, I guess, to see what we're doing is working. So
you've kind of touched base on with several of our products. Is there any one in particular that you are most excited about or feel you use most?
I would say the ones we use the most now are the Carbos and the Vita and Terra, just because, you know, it kind of blends into everything we're doing. You know, we can use it with the biological program, but yet we're still using some starters in the furrow, so you know, it works well in that too, or a foliar application, you know, we do some of that. Those two are probably our biggest users as of right now.
Well, John, I'd like to thank you for spending a little bit of time here with us today, letting us come out into the field and dig a few plants and take a look. As you mentioned in our conversations, you know, learning to look at those small differences. Some of the things we do impact the plant in season may not always result in yield, doesn't necessarily mean that the products aren't effective in doing something for us. And that's an important step. So, you know, I just want to thank you for spending the time with us and opening your operation up, and for your business as well.
Thank you.